Turn the volume down. Zippity-doo-dah. Brr-ba-dur-ba-dur-ba-dur. Zippity-doo-dah. Zippity. It says I am live. I am not sure if I actually am. I'm doing an out of the blue Facebook Live without announcing it ahead of time, partly to just see if it lands in anybody's feeds and anybody pays attention to it. And if not, it'll be a video for later. But I like studying the algorithms and seeing the ways in which they stomp on some of my posts and not on other ones, which trying not to be paranoid, but it kind of seems that the more important my posts, the more it gets stomped on. If I make a post of kittens being cute, okay, now 500 people are allowed to see it. But maybe that's just the response of people. Whatever. So, I'm going to be at Anarchapulco. I will be keynote speaker at the end of the Monday schedule on February 12th. And I'm actually flying in the 11th. I think I don't even get there until the morning of the 12th. So I will be hanging out for a bunch of Monday when I'm not speaking, and then hanging out for a bunch Tuesday, and then hanging out for a bunch of Wednesday, and hanging out for some of Thursday before I fly away. And I don't remember the time on Thursday when I fly away either. I will have some of these, and I will have some of these with me. Yeehaw. But as I've said a million times before, one of my favorite things is, or basically my favorite thing at all of these events is just randomly talking to people. Now, some people are annoying and obnoxious, and it's a chore to talk to them. But lots of cool people show up to such things, and meeting those people to me is way more important than like giving a talk, which is just sort of a one-directional monologue that people could watch online later, although there is some back and forth and a question time and stuff like that. So, first of all, anarchapulco.com is the website where you can get tickets. If you use, I think this is set up, you'll find out whether it is or not. If you use Larkenpulco, Larkenpulco, as your promo code, I think you get something off the price. I don't even know how much it is. Now, I know some people are going to sort of complain that, like, oh, it's expensive. Yeah, I wouldn't be there if I had to pay for it because I'm too broke for that stuff. But it's, a Lamborghini is expensive too. I can't afford it, but other people can. So given the number of speakers and the wide variety of topics being covered, it's not ridiculously expensive, and they often lose money. But people complaining that it's expensive, okay, don't buy it. Like, that's what I do. There's lots of expensive stuff in the world that's way outside my price range that I don't buy. If it's within your price range, I think there's a ton you could get out of it. And as usual, most of what I get out of it, and this is true of a lot of the people I talk to, most of what they get out of it isn't even the talks and presentations, although that stuff's fun too, and workshops, and there's all sorts of fun stuff going on. It's just talking to the normal people there and making connections that, like, there are still connections, lifelong connections I now have that are a result of meeting people at Anarchapulco. One sort of hysterical example is I met Andrew Treglia, the director of Jones Plantation, at Anarchapulco, despite the fact that we both live in Phoenix. If not for that event, I don't think we ever would have met, which is kind of funny because we live like 20 minutes from each other. So, anyway, the talk I'm giving there is about when humanity grows up, and I'm not going to get into that here, but that'll be a fun talk there. But when I go to these events, and I think basically it's easy to fall in the mindset of, here's us, our little group of people. Well, thankfully it's not very little, it's like thousands of people now. I don't know how many people, probably hundreds, will be at this event. But it's sort of this is where we can get together and sort of have like-minded people, and then it can feel like us against the rest of the world. And in one sense, it kind of is us against the rest of the world, because the rest of the world advocates that we be robbed and forcibly dominated by a ruling class. Yay! Well, I mean, there's plenty of voluntarists who won't be at the event, but you know what I mean. As far as percentages of population who actually believe in freedom and actually advocate peaceful coexistence. But I think so. I think there's a very positive thing of being among like-minded people, and that's even more true for those, and there are many of them, for those anarchists and voluntarists who in real life don't personally know anybody who believes as they do. And that, like, I remember being in that position. I haven't been in that position for many years now, but I remember being in that position, and it kind of sucks. You feel like you're wandering around in an alien world surrounded by people with a bonkers, destructive, anti-human belief system, and it's kind of stressful and frustrating, and it's especially if you try to reach out to them and you get no indication that anybody's paying any attention. I think for those people, there's something very psychologically important about, one way or another, whether it's this event or just online making like meetup groups or whatever it is, finding a way to actually connect with other human beings. And it's funny, we just had the back on Saturday, we had the screening in LA of the Jones Plantation, which went really well. Basically a full theater, and lots of more than half of the people there hadn't seen it before, which surprised me, but that's awesome. I like it more when there's a bunch of people who haven't seen it before, because then you're seeing their first impression reaction. But then the next day on Sunday, we had a little dinner thing where a bunch of people came over and we chatted, and we chatted for literally like 10 hours in a row. It ended up, and not everybody was there the whole time, but met some awesome people and had some fun discussions. And it's not even because everybody's on the same page or understands the same things. Like there's being on the same page in general, but disagreeing about specifics. And there's also just people who haven't heard certain ideas and don't know about certain things, and they're exchanging ideas back and forth. And but if the sort of fundamental assumptions are the same of like freedom, you can have a whole bunch of fun discussions back and forth. And I, like, by the end, it was me and two awesome dudes who were both former military, and we had a really cool discussion about all sorts of things related to that. Won't say who they were, but you know who you are. But that was awesome. And the fact that I was there among people chatting for 10 hours and it wasn't like stressful and horrible for me kind of says something, because I'm a asocial introvert hermit most of the time, and I try to avoid people like the plague. And Anarchapulco may be the last time I'm doing that at a event like this for a long time, or forever, because I'm probably not going to be doing public events in the future, at least for a while, probably forever, because I think there's more to be done. There's ways in which my efforts will be more useful to the rest of the world, focused on other things. And it's not that I don't enjoy it, and I don't meet cool people and have cool discussions with people already sort of on the same page as me. It's just that right now there's a million other projects I wish I was doing, most of which pay absolutely nothing, some of which pay close to nothing, and that's pretty much all of them, that I really want to get finished. I mean, how am I up to 7 books now? I don't even know. I think the Jones Plantation novel is number 7 if you count What Anarchy Isn't, which is sort of a little pamphlet thing, hardly even counts. And also a couple of them are out of print and stuff. But I have a number of books and other movie ideas. I don't know if the movie ideas will happen, but the books will. And I also want to be recording music and a whole bunch of other stuff. So whether I make any money doing that, oh well. And I'm working a lot more often on the mirror now, which I won't take time to explain that again. You can probably look up on YouTube and see what it is. But that humongous project I'm now spending way more time on, because I got some financial support from people to be able to work on that. And not only am I not going to say who it was, I don't actually know who it was. It came by way of somebody else. But so I've been doing a ton of that in addition to like pushing the movie since it just came out and all that, and then getting ready for Anarchapulco to do the talk there and all sorts of mayhem. But those things, any event sort of, takes my focus away from working on the 87 million other projects that I really hope get finished someday. And I have finished 8 billion videos and 7 books and a stinking movie. So, well, I didn't make the movie. I wrote the movie. But so it isn't. So I hope anybody who has a chance and has the time and money does get to Anarchapulco, because I always make it a point, even though I'm an asocial introvert. If I'm going to be at those events, I make it a point to basically spend the whole day. I find some niche somewhere and I'm hanging out there so that people know that I'm there, and I talk to whoever comes by. At Porkfest in New Hampshire, it was my rock by the parking lot, and I was always there and talked to a million different people. So I'll find some little hiding place at the secret garden down in Acapulco. Now, in case you didn't know, Acapulco just got trashed by that nasty ass hurricane couple months back. But they're still having the event, and it's still in the same place. The buildings are still there, the venue's still there. A hell of a lot of the trees aren't, which is really sad. And it'll be kind of sad to view the devastation or the lack of greenery now, but it grows back. Nature just does that. But the venue's still there, and it's a really cool place, and a cool place for chatting with people. So I will be doing that. Now, what was the other thing I was going to rant about? So, to finish that thought, if you can get down there, do. And a lot of the people I've talked to, the things they got out of going to Anarchapulco, and this is true of myself, that they most treasure wasn't on the schedule and wasn't something they expected and wasn't something they knew about ahead of time. Now, sometimes I went to a workshop and I learned this cool stuff that I didn't know about. A lot of times it's just, well, I met somebody and we got to talking and ended up like working on this project together, or just being friends or staying in contact for ages. Um, and so you can look at a schedule and go, okay, there's the stuff I know I can go see, and the workshops I know I can go do. And it doesn't mean you know what the person's going to say exactly, but you have a general idea. What you don't know is the people that you don't know that you're going to meet, and the things you don't know you're going to learn, and the connections that you don't know you're going to make. And that's why I've made myself go to a number of these things, because those things keep happening, and I have no way ahead of time to know who I'm going to meet and how, what cool connections there will still be, years and years and years and decades from now, as a result of being in the same place with a bunch of voluntarists. So if you can get there, I highly recommend it. Now, my talks are almost always trying to tell the like-minded people something they don't already know, or at least framing in a different way, or doing something different enough that it isn't just preaching to the choir, and or making something that's targeted at the rest of the world and not the voluntarists. Because I can go down there and say, government sucks, rah, rah, rah. Okay, whoop-de-doo. What good did that do? Like, we all know that. What are you going to do about it? So I usually target that. I will mention that my talk about when humanity grows up, mostly it's going to be about the rest of the world and statism. It is going to cover some things having to do with the movement and the ways in which a lot of the people in the movement also need to grow up. And I don't just mean grow up and be responsible. I mean a very fundamental philosophical view of reality that even a bunch of self-described anarchists don't really seem to understand yet. And zero statists understand it, because if you ever understand it, you can't be a statist anymore. It's just like that understanding. Like if you understand geography and how many people there are in the world, you can't believe in Santa anymore, because it doesn't freaking work. So when you grow up in certain ways philosophically and psychologically, statism doesn't work anymore in your own brain. So 0% of statists will know some of what I'm saying. And sadly, a bunch of people who identify as anarchists also don't yet understand some of the things I'm going to talk about, or have chosen not to understand them, which is a different topic entirely. Um, the the whole process of like living your life, like whoever's hearing this or whoever does hear it, all three of you, depending on how hard the algorithms stomp on this, um, you have your own life and you have the people you have to deal with in your work or in your family or whatever. Now, my wish for you is that as many of them as possible actually understand freedom and advocate that for you. But I know for the vast majority of you, and for me, we have to deal on a day-to-day basis with a bunch of people who don't at all believe in freedom and don't even know what the hell it is. And they so don't know what it is that they imagine themselves to be advocates of freedom while cheering for the authoritarian domination of everybody they know and everybody they don't know. Yay. But it's psychologically detrimental to voluntarists and anarchists if they feel like there's no way to get through to those people, including people like you know and care about, and you've given up trying to talk to anybody because it's too frustrating. And one of the topics that kept coming up, I mean, it always comes up when I'm talking to a group, is the methods we teach in Candles in the Dark for how to communicate. And first and foremost, how to train your own psychology, you as the voluntarist, to not botch up the communications. Because the way everybody, myself included, naturally talk when they believe something fundamentally different to the people they're talking to, almost always makes an argument and a disagreement, makes the other person defensive and all that fun stuff, and creates tension and annoyance on all sides. It is frustrating to me how many people will spend so much time and effort complaining about statists, but won't spend literally 100th of the time and effort to focus on their own psychology and what it is that they're doing that makes them so ineffective at talking to statists. And that's why we made Candles in the Dark. So if, like, the amount of time I see anarchists complaining about the irrationality of statists, which totally justified, and I completely understand, I completely sympathize. The amount of time anarchists spend complaining about that, if they spent that time doing Candles in the Dark and learning how that actually works, not only would that be more productive, but the results would be different. Like when they're talking to people, if they train themselves to be in a very different mindset, like Candles in the Dark teaches, it's actually more enjoyable for the voluntarists too, like by a lot. And so one of the little things we did down there in LA when we were meeting on Sunday with a bunch of people is we showed a little video of a back and forth Candles in the Dark little session that's on YouTube that I had with a former DC cop. And that's a fun little thing. And you can look it up if you look up Larkin Rose CITD Bart, because that was his name. That'll find it. Because that was a fun little back and forth. And anybody can watch that exchange and go, oh, well, that's easy. That's simple. I could do that. Yeah, you could do that, but you won't. If you haven't gone through Candles in the Dark or haven't, by some miracle, accidentally learned all the psychological things on your own, which that could happen, then even though you can look at that and say, well, that would be really easy. Yeah, but it's even easier to accidentally say a couple things that make it into a confrontation. And once somebody perceives you as a philosophical enemy, they're not there to listen. They're not there to be open and, carefully consider what they're saying. They're there to defeat your crappy ideas, like crappy in their viewpoint. That is how they perceive you, and that is how they will treat you. I mean, the most glaringly obvious example is, how many debates have you seen where either side changes their mind about anything? Like every once in a while, once in a blue moon, you'll see somebody go, okay, you sort of have a point on this, but still, blah, 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 blah. But how often does somebody fundamentally change their view? I've seen a huge number of people pause and have to reconsider and rearrange their fundamental views of reality in the most comfortable, like non-confrontational settings if the voluntarist talking to them actually trains themselves to do it right. So anyway, Candles in the Dark, you can still find it at attendcandles.com. That'll actually link you to a page on the Rose Channel page, because we made that into an online thing. It's a 2-day seminar that we did in person in some places and lost money almost every time we did it. But then we made it an online thing that people can do. But I bring it up because when you look at a crowd at Anarchapulco or PorcFest or 80 billion other freedom things, there's this group of people that expresses, and I'm not complaining about this, is totally understandable, expresses frustration and a feeling of alienation compared to the rest of the stinking planet. Because everybody else believes differently. Everybody else believes in government and voting for rulers and advocating authoritarian domination and robbery of mankind. And so while I think it's really healthy and important to be among like-minded people, there's also the reality that if you do that to hide from humanity, you aren't making a difference. I mean, if you do that all the time, if you go and hide on occasion just to get away from the insanity of mainstream America or mainstream any other country, okay, I totally understand. Totally sympathize, not a problem. But if you try to sort of, keep out the rest of the world, while that's understandable and there's nothing like immoral about that, it does mean that you are basically segregating yourself out of the game that matters, which is winning hearts and minds of the people who mean well but have been taught stupid statist garbage. So if you're taking yourself out of the game just to avoid that frustration instead of learning ways to do it that aren't frustrating, that's, the psychos in power, that's sort of the second best thing they can hope for. Their first best is everybody blindly believes whatever crap we feed them. Their second best is, well, a few people don't believe us, but they keep quiet and they hide in a corner because they're scared and they're paranoid and they don't think anybody's going to listen to them. So they're not really a threat to the rest of the herd, blindly obeying the state. And, okay, I'm going to make this short because I could go into this rant a billion times. There's never been an easier time to try to spread the ideas of self-ownership than there is right now. For literally most of history, if you say the king's full of shit, he has no right to rule us, they torture you and rip your intestines out and have a big public horrible massacre of you and then stick your head on the London Bridge or something. They don't do that now, thankfully. Now, some people do get knocked off if they happen to expose the wrong thing and stuff. But there's lots of people who talk about this who don't get murdered anymore. That's very unusual and different compared to most of history. So if your complaint now is, well, I'm not going to talk about these things and I'm not going to learn how to be better at that because people are dumb. Really? So all the people who dared to talk about this in the past, risking being decapitated and shit and then literally being tortured and murdered for telling the truth, they dared to do it against those odds, but you don't want to do it because people are dumb. It's And I know people are dumb, and I know it's frustrating, but if that's the worst we're up against and you still self-censor, you won't put in the time and effort to learn how to do it better? And well, there's two parts of that. One is that if it's frustrating and it feels like it never accomplishes anything and you can't imagine a method that actually would accomplish anything, I can totally relate to that too, of just saying, well, it doesn't help anyway. I try to talk to people and I do, but what about my roads? And it's I give up, I'm running away. So the first thing is, if you're convinced that it's hopeless, I can see that, only you're totally provably wrong. Case in point, Anarchapulco, and I could point to a zillion other things too. There wasn't any event like that in the world for the first, 15, how long has that thing been around? 15 years of me being an anarchist, there wasn't that. There were no such events anywhere. There were some whiny commies somewhere on the other side of the world pretending to be anarchists while having their master plan that they wanted forced on everybody. I know thousands and thousands and thousands of people who were statists a few years ago. And each with their own story and each with their own path, they're now voluntarists and anarchists. Now, pretty much every single one of them, including myself, if you talk to them today and they might be completely unreceptive. They might be irrational. They might be stupid. I know the statist me would have been stupid and irrational and made dumb excuses to cling to the statism that former me believed in, because I remember doing that. But that doesn't mean it's hopeless. And that's the thing. That's one of the most frustrating things I see from people in the freedom movement. Again, I understand why and I sympathize. But when they say, no, if anybody hasn't woken up yet, it's totally hopeless. No. And that's really crappy logic. Because if you, the world has seen, Soviet Russia and Red China and Nazi Germany and just horrendously violent, just unspeakably evil authoritarian monstrosities. And most of the people who went through that, they could see this is really bad and shouldn't be happening, but it still didn't occur to them to not have a ruling class. Their solution was, we need a nicer ruling class. And so the idea that, well, if they haven't woken up, in the last few years, the last few years was kind of ridiculous. It still wasn't Nazi Germany. It still wasn't Soviet Russia, where you get dragged off to the gulag if you happen to be related to somebody who sort of whispered something that sounded like it was critical of Stalin. We're still not in that position. And most of the people who actually lived through that, they didn't turn into anarchists. But now, literally, from people talking about this stuff over the last, 5 or 10 years, that has made more people give up the belief in statism than literally governments killing 100 million of their own people. Because that's, if you look up Death by Government by R.J. Rommel, I believe it is, it runs down the list of look how often governments kill their own people, not even including war. And that doesn't make people anarchists. It doesn't make people question the underlying paradigm. It just makes them go, I really wish a different guy was in power. Okay? That doesn't fix anything. The fact that right now, not only do we not get murdered for saying government is completely illegitimate, but there are more people saying that and believing that now than ever in the history of the world. Now, mind you, there's a very big difference between someone saying, this current regime is illegitimate, and saying all regimes are illegitimate. All governments, all authoritarian regimes are 100% illegitimate no matter what. Hardly anybody has believed that for the past however many centuries it's been. And now that is increasing at a rate it never has before. Well, at least in recorded history. If you go back 100,000 years, I don't know, maybe the whole world understood this before they were duped into bowing to the state again. But it's, if you won't do it in these conditions, you would never do it. If you want to pretend that I would have stood up against, no, you wouldn't. If you won't say words to people with the scariest thing you're facing is somebody going, you're an extremist. Okay, that's not quite as bad as being drawn and quartered for talking bad about the king. Sorry, this turned into a guilt trip session. But I sort of mean it, because it's when there are voluntarists who decide nobody else is going to wake up. Really? Were you a statist 5 years ago? Should everybody have given up on you and decided that you were too dumb? Because this crap has been going on for centuries, and you didn't wake up until really recently. And I didn't wake up until pretty recently. In my case, it was 27 years ago. That's still pretty damn recent in the grand scheme of things. So to decide nobody else can understand this, we're all doomed, is just ridiculous and provably false. There's never been a better time than now. So while I'm all in favor of the sort of anarchist therapy of be among people who are like-minded for your own like, mental health on occasion, if you don't dare to like talk to the rest of the world, and if you're not willing to put in some time and effort to get better at that, even if it's just like sharing videos and whatever and commenting here and there, then you're not one of the people who's going to make a difference. And you can totally compare this to like slave days. If you look and go, slavery is like heinously evil, but people are going to call me names if I point that out, so I'm going to quietly let it happen. Don't you at least want to be able to look back and said, yeah, I was condemning it. I was pointing out that statism was inherently immoral and all that stuff, whether or not anybody listened. And I will do this guilt trip, and then I'll go to comments and see if there's anything I need to respond to. I've done this guilt trip before of when you speak to your children or your grandchildren or like the generations down, whether or not they're actually your descendants, and they say, golly, what was it like back when people thought there was still such a thing as a legitimate ruling class and divine right of politicians? What do you want to be able to tell them that you did about it? Well, I grouched in a corner and didn't say anything. Okay, if you want if you want that to be what you have to say in answer to that, okay, you can choose that. If it'd rather be, well, I did what I could to spread the ideas, and a lot of times it may not have worked, and sometimes it worked, and whatever. But right now is the easiest time to push against statism as a whole, not just a particular injustice or something like that, but the idea. So anyway, Anarchapulco will be a fun event. And I will be there chatting with whoever the heck shows up. And I have a million other projects, and I know a million other people have a million other projects relating to this. And I encourage you to both take care of your own mental sanity enough that you don't get frustrated and go completely bonkers at the lunacy of the rest of the world. But also don't stop being part of the thing that's spreading the truth and the concepts of self-ownership or non-aggression or stateless society or whatever, however you want to describe it. Because right now we have numbers that we've never had in the history of the world before. There's little individuals here and there that have been writing about this. Albert J. Nock writing Our Enemy of the State a bajillion years ago, and Bastiat and Lysander Spooner, and, going back, many, 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 many years. Like right now we have not only more people on our side than voluntarists have ever had on our side, but we have a more receptive audience than ever before. And I know it can be hard for some people to believe that if they just learned this and got all excited and ran out and tried to talk to people and got a bogus, irrational response and was like, nobody can understand it, I give up, because you've been trying for 5 minutes. But yes, it is as someone who has been doing this for 27 years, I can tell you the receptiveness of the average person to these ideas is 100 times better than it was 20 years ago. They are 100 times more receptive to the idea, especially if you train yourself in how to present it so they don't perceive it as an attack on them. They perceive it as an invitation to reconsider some stuff, and then you help them dig their way out from under the authoritarian crap they were taught. So, Candles in the Dark is attendcandles.com. Getting tickets for Anarchapulco is anarchapulco.com. Use the promo code Larkenpulco, Larkenpulco. I think that's already up and functioning. If not, whoops. And so I will see some of you there. Now, I'm going to jump into the comments and see if there's anything in particular to respond to. And if not, I will end this and let it post and see if anybody sees it. Ba-da-ba. Howdy, Ted, you extremist. At least 5 of us are here. Yeah, they're stomping on this pretty hard. And now Facebook has like this new feature where I forget what they even call it, where you change it over and you can have more whatever. And yeah, of the 28,000 here and 60,000 on YouTube. Either way, they're like stomping hard on that. So it's only ever a tiny fraction of the people who like subscribe and follow the channel, whoever actually see it. Um, la di da di da. Without government, who would oppress and rob us? Yeah, whatever will we do? Who would build the roads? Me! I will build the roads. Not all by myself, but it's sort of. Oh, that's Shar Shar. Hi, Shar Shar. Um, and she is aware of the irony of that comment because there's a place in Arizona in which I built the road. I made a road on this little place. I'm not telling you where it is, but we hope that to be a cool place, cool hangout for voluntarists. Rather soon. How's the mayor going? Any completion in sight? Well, completion is definitely not imminent, but I've been getting way more done. I will say the script. It, do I dare to even guess a completion date for the script? There's the script and there's the animation. The script is huge. The animation is huge. Um, but the script is now. The end is near. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, which I don't think is just a freight train about to run me over. Um, LA was awesome. I think I said that at the beginning. We had just about a full theater, and a grand time was had by all. One drunk heckler, but that's okay. And then the next day we had a chat with, I don't even know how many people were there, 15, 20, hanging out and chatting for hours and hours and hours. That was really cool. And so, yeehaw. Oh, also, I have to guilt trip people on this. Like, we made a stinking movie. And so, even doing nothing else, if you just mention it, oh, I have to do that. I have to do that again. Because I made a bunch of Jones Plantation memes, which are like screenshots from the movie with little quotes from the movie and then mentions of the movie. That literally, if a bunch of people just stuck them, because I can go down my Facebook feed and in almost everything having anything to do with politics, there will be 100% relevant Jones Plantation meme that perfectly fits that I can just throw in and it speaks for itself. And it speaks for itself whether or not anybody knows what the Jones Plantation is. And if they don't, then they see it, it makes the point, and then they can see the link in the meme. So if we had 100 people just throwing out Jones Plantation memes under, Facebook posts and YouTube and Twitter and all over the place, you don't even have to figure out what to think. You just grab the right meme and throw it in. So one thing I have to do is post a thing where people can get all those memes in one place. I think it was like 15 or 17 or something of them that I already made that people can post wherever they want. Because the whole point of the movie is a lot of things like this is not something I would give to somebody out of the blue without any discussion or preface, because most people don't just read a book out of the blue. There still are some weird kooks out there who like to read, even if they don't know it is. Sadly, that's not most of the world anymore. This, I'm really dang proud of The Most Dangerous Superstition. It's still the most important thing I've ever written by a lot. And as soon as somebody is ready for the discussion, regardless of how they, stumbled upon the ideas, then I would throw this at them. But I would not start with this. I would absolutely start with this or with the Jones Plantation movie. Oh, by the way, thejonesplantation.com is where to get the book. You can also buy it in bulk for much cheaper and sell it yourself for a profit to be an evil capitalist. JonesPlantationFilm.com is where to see the movie. But the most important reason I wanted Jones Plantation to exist is as a step one for a lot of people. I've talked to a bajillion people, and often people remember, oh yeah, I remember when I saw like The Tiny Dot, or or The Story of Your Enslavement, before Molyneux completely went off the rails, became a Trumpite. Lots of little things that start people down that path. I think the Jones Plantation is going to start a hell of a lot of people down that path. So it's a great first step to aim at people and a place to start them, because it doesn't lecture them on here's what should be and here's what's wrong with your belief system. It just tells a story, and they have to notice the parallels. I mean, you can't exactly miss all the parallels. It kind of runs you over with a tank with some of the parallels. And then there's some more subtle ones that people may or may not immediately notice. Um, but this is an awesome first step. The book and the movie, and because way more people watch movies than read books these days, the movie is just so freaking cool. And I can say that because I didn't make it. I wrote it, but I didn't make it a movie. If I had, it wouldn't be anywhere near as good as it is. So, ye freaking ha. Oh, let me see if there's anything else in the comments before I close this out. So I think I said all the links. There's a billion links. Duh. I'll add them to the description below for all the things. Let's see. Oh, my picture isn't in my IMDb page. Charger, I'll send you a free copy of the book, Charger. Everybody else has to pay for it. Learned more from a rock. If you read it too, if you read them the whole book, like in chunks, I'll actually check to see if, because somebody else funded the printing of this, and they're now selling the book because I didn't have the money to do that. I'll see if they would care if you like read chunks of it. I mean, if you did all one thing. I do know we're making an actual audio. A friend of mine is making an actual audio book of it, which that I even have to arrange with the people who actually printed it, and it's their book, because I don't want to compete with them. Oh, by the way, they do want you to compete with them. Like if you buy it in bulk and sell it for way more than you bought it for, and sell it for less than they sell individual copies for, we're thrilled if people do that. So I think a case of 80 of them is, can I do math? No, I'm dumb. Was it 500 for a case? I don't want to say it. If you go to thejonesplantation.com, the top of the page is order the book, and you can see the bulk rates. And I forget what they are, but they're cheap enough that if you sell it for a normal price, including less than the price they sell individuals for, you can make money off of it. And we're thrilled to have people do that, and have people all over the place reselling it. So feel free to do that. So zippity doo dah. So yeah, I will check about the reading thing. And there's even like little snippets here and there that Amanda and I are going to do videos about the little snippets. We already did one. Like basically, they're called Mr. Smith Explains, like little pieces from the novel where Smith explains the tricks of tyrants. Yeehaw. And I can elaborate on that. So yay, I will see some of you at Anarchapulco, and if you can't afford that, I totally sympathize. I couldn't afford it either if they were charging me for it, but because I'm speaking there, I don't have to pay for a ticket. I will be speaking at the end of the Monday schedule, which is February 12th. But then I will be hanging out like a bunch of Monday, all of Tuesday, all of Wednesday, some of Thursday before I fly away to chat with whoever's there. And by the end, I'll probably be exhausted and sleep deprived and all that. But that's what I do when I'm going to go be among the riffraff. But yeah, after this, I'm going to limit how much riffraffing I do. So that is probably it for now. I will stick the links underneath, and people can comment and I can respond there, and yada, yada, yada. So we'll see if that works. Zippity doo dah. Everybody have a radical extremist day. And don't give up even if it totally sucks and feels really frustrating, because that's all of human history. At some point I have to finish my video about the evolution of the belief in individual rights, which is a really weird wandering tale of lunacy, but it only changed as a result of people saying over and over again, what we have right now is not okay. This is what we should have. So even if you have to say that 800 times before one person actually hears it, say it 800 times. If you want to be better at saying it, then check out Candles in the Dark. Yeehaw. Alrighty then. So that's that. Have a glorious day. Zippity doo dah.